What's up everyone, Pritch here, bringing you a guide on everything Firestaff in New World. First, we'll go over basic and heavy attacks. Second, we'll go over all the weapon abilities, upgrades, and passives that can be spec'd into for both the Fire Mage and Pyromancer trait lines. Finally, we're going to cover potential builds and fun weapon combos to try out. Let's burn some rubber. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the hottest weapon in New World, the Firestaff. The Firestaff scales off intelligence, so the more damage you want to do, the smarter you have to be. Before hopping into the basics, I want to give you guys a quick heads up on two things. First, my test dummy to runs has a sneaky little perk on him that grants him a fortify when I get him below a certain health threshold, which is around 30% health. This fortify will show up as a shield icon on his buff bar and reduce the damage I do to him. Second, as with the Ice Gauntlet, I have absolutely no idea what's going on with the crit values I'm getting, so when it comes to determining how abilities are functioning and working, I'm going to be ignoring the crit values I get and just focusing on the non-crit values, which thankfully all make complete sense. For those that want to follow along with the math, know that I have a 20% damage bonus from light armor, I have a 10% damage bonus on light and heavy attacks from 50 points in intelligence, I have a 20% damage bonus on critical hits from 100 points in intelligence, and I have no other outside damage amplifiers. I hit to runs with a light attack for 379 damage, which means that my Part A base number value that I'll be using in all my calculations will be 291.54. For those interested in the numbers but have no idea what I'm talking about whatsoever, check out my How to Calculate Damage in New World video where I go over Amazon's interesting way of applying damage amplifiers. Alright, on to the good stuff. Let's talk about your light and heavy attacks. For your light attacks, point your staff forward and shoot out an orange projectile dealing 100% weapon damage and costing 2 mana. These light attacks can be spammed once every second. For your heavy attacks, bring your staff back and charge it up before releasing it forward and shooting out a big orange projectile dealing 140% weapon damage and costing 5 mana. These heavy attacks can be spammed every second and a half, which means that in 3 seconds you can get off 3 light attacks or you can get off 2 heavy attacks. Basics done, let's move on to the trait line that will make you fall in love with heavy attacks. Fire Mage. The first weapon ability is Pillar of Fire. Aim a small circle, then bring your staff forward and summon a small explosion dealing 134% weapon damage. This sits on a 9.6 second cooldown and costs 15 mana. If I compare this with a regular heavy attack, I'm getting 6% less damage for triple the mana cost, and this takes up one of my 3 ability slots. What a great value. Wow. If anyone is interested in using this ability, hit me up because I also have some Fire Festival 2022 tickets for sale that I think you might be interested in. Now, there's either a huge bug on this ability or the tooltip has glaring misinformation. I got a clip of me doing double damage procced against the runs, and it turns out that this ability is coded to have an inner and outer pop of damage, and if you hit somebody off center, then they're going to get hit with both the inner and outer rings to take double damage. I have no idea if this is a bug or intended, but my guess would be that this is probably a bug and not intended, because otherwise, the tooltip guy at Amazon is sweating bullets right now. The first upgrade is First Strike. Deal 40% more damage to full health targets. Basically, just do decent damage if you initiate with this. The final upgrade is Arson's Advantage. Gain 10% max mana back per enemy hit. This circle is extremely small, so there's a solid chance you're only hitting 1 to 2 people with it, but it's still a nice little mana boost, and while this ability can crit, I'm really unimpressed overall. The next weapon ability is the iconic Meteor Shower. Spin your staff in the air like you're mixing stew above you and drop tiny fireballs down in a wide area, dealing 34% weapon damage on the first strike. Then all the other damage ticks will do 20% weapon damage. But Pritch, the tooltip says it does an additional 20% weapon damage. Look, if we're this far into the 101 series and you still believe tooltips, then on top of the Fire Festival 2022 tickets, I also have some magic beans that grant your every wish, and I'm selling them for the low price of $1,000. This ability costs 5 mana per second and lasts for a total of 6 seconds. In those 6 seconds, you're going to do a total of 9 ticks of damage. The very first tick is going to be for that 34%, and the other 8 are for 20%, for a grand total of 194% weapon damage over 6 seconds. This costs a total of 30 mana and sits on a 17.2 second cooldown, but the cooldown is initiated at the beginning of the cast, so you really only have 10 seconds of a cooldown. I'm going to be blunt here. Rooting yourself for 6 seconds while only being able to cast around 10 meters away to do a grand total of less than 200% weapon damage for a third of your mana bar is absolutely garbage. So these upgrades better be amazing. And just so we're on the same page here, I know the real value is the AoE potential, so you can hit a ton of enemies with this. But just take a look at the Ice Gauntlet's Ice Storm if you want to know what a good AoE ability looks like. The first upgrade is Immolation. Get a whole 1% max mana back for each target you hit with the initial damage proc of Meteor Shower. Wow. The second upgrade is Fiery Determination. Get Grit while casting Meteor Shower. Grit makes you glow white and prevents you from being staggered, knocked down, or knocked back so you can keep stirring your stew without being interrupted. The final upgrade is Judgment of Helios. Instead of 20% weapon damage on your 2nd through 9th hits, do 25% weapon damage. This means that your new grand total in damage is 234% weapon damage over 6 seconds. To receive this amazing value, it's only going to cost you 1 weapon ability slot, 4 out of 19 of your trait points, 30 mana, 6 seconds of your life to stand 10 meters away from your enemies. So what are you waiting for? Go get your Meteor Showers today! I'm sorry if it feels like I'm coming down hard here, but guys, I literally just did a video on the Ice Gauntlet, and Ice Storm has the same radius, can be cast twice as far, has no channel time, does a minimum of 343% weapon damage in 5 seconds, costs only 25 or even 5 mana, and on top of everything else, it slows everything by 25%. That's what real AoE value looks like. The next weapon ability is Fireball. Launch a giant molten fireball that deals 140% weapon damage, then leaves a 3-meter burn field that lasts for 6 seconds and deals 10% weapon damage each second. This sits on a 14.4 second cooldown and costs 25 mana. If your enemies decide to take a nap in the burn field, then you're going to do a grand total of 200% weapon damage over 6 seconds. I'm really not a fan of these abilities that do the same amount of damage as your heavy attacks, but at least the damage over time is kinda helpful if you have mobs grouped up on a tank, or if you can throw this down in wars. The first upgrade is Scorched Earth. The burn field lasts for 9 seconds now instead of 6. This means that your new total damage is 230% weapon damage over 9 seconds. The final upgrade is Catch. If you hit something with the fireball, get 10% max mana back and reduce your cooldowns by 7%. I'm pretty sure this was bugged in my footage because I don't get mana or cooldown reduction, and I honestly don't know if this has been fixed yet, so just keep your eyes peeled. Onto the passives that will jack up your heavy attacks so hard you're going to question why they even bothered creating weapon abilities. First up, Spell Focus. Your heavy attacks restore 5% max mana on hit. With 100 base mana, this means that you're going to fully refund your heavy attacks, which makes them cost nothing to cast as long as you're hitting your shots. Fiery Restoration. Heavy attacks reduce your cooldowns by 10%. Since you can cast 2 heavies in 3 seconds, that means you can get 20% cooldown reduction every 3 seconds from spamming something that essentially doesn't cost any mana. That's incredible value. Clear Mind. While above 50% mana, get a 10% in power. Empower is a buff that increases your damage. Singe. When you crit, give the target a burn debuff, which does 3% weapon damage each second for 6 seconds for a grand total of 18% weapon damage over 6 seconds. I love this passive. I think it's very smart and thematic for the Fire Mage, but honestly, I'd love to see at least like double this damage. I think 18% is too low to be impactful, and I think the Firestaff could use a little love in the damage department. Clear Casting. If you haven't taken damage in 3 seconds, get a 10% damage increase. This shows up on our buff bar, so it's going to apply the same as an Empower. The animation for this is your character glowing white, and for some reason, I had to get hit before the 3 seconds would start to count down. I'm not sure if that was intended, but hopefully it was a bug and it doesn't always require taking damage to actually activate. Spellslinger. Get 15% crit chance. More crit chance means more burns, which means more damage. Flare. Heavy attacks don't cost mana. So now, your heavy attacks don't cost mana, they give you a 5% mana recovery, and they reduce your cooldowns by 10%. Also, they hit just as hard as your other Fire Mage abilities. What? Prophet of a Fire God. Gain a 20% damage buff on critical hits. This increases your strike damage, not any damage over time applications. Finally, we have the Fire Mage Elite. Runes of Helios. When you cast a spell, put a 2-meter fire rune on the ground that increases damage by 30% while standing on the rune. The rune lasts for 7 seconds and has an internal cooldown of 30 seconds. So you cast one spell to create the rune wherever you cast it from, then stand on the rune for a 30% DPS increase. 3 fun notes about the rune. First, you have a dash ability called Burnout in the next trait line, and this rune will appear wherever you land when using that ability. Second, other people can use your rune, and you can use other people's rune. Third, your light and heavy attacks are spells and will get the damage boost. That's going to round out the Fire Mage trait line. To recap, you have abilities, and they exist. Your heavy attacks are insanely strong. You burn anything you crit, which is awesome because you also get more crit chance. And your elite is a fat 30% damage increase. Alright everybody, mid-round break, and thanks to the overwhelming love and support from this community, this channel has just started to skyrocket, and I'm just super appreciative. Thank you guys, and if this continues, this channel is probably going to get over 5,000 subs before the game even launches, before New World is even out. If you guys want to be a part of that movement, part of that love and happiness you're bringing my way, go ahead and hit that sub button, go hit that like button, comment down below. All that stuff is free for you, and it helps this channel out a ton. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Let's go move on to the Pyromancer trait lines. Next up is the trait line designed for people that want to watch the world burn. Pyromancer. The first weapon ability is Flamethrower. Turn that staff sideways, walk at half speed, and literally use it like a flamethrower, dealing 34% weapon damage each second, and each hit gives the enemy a burn tick which deals 3% weapon damage for 6 seconds, totaling 18% weapon damage over 6 seconds. This hits on a 7.7 second cooldown that begins once Flamethrower ends and costs 5 mana per second, and also, this tooltip is wrong in the biggest way. This ability does in fact do 34% weapon damage, and it does give a burn stack each time it damages, and the burn stacks do 3% weapon damage over 6 seconds, and it does actually cost 5 mana a second, but it procs for damage every half second, which means that it's doing double the damage the tooltip indicates. The maximum amount of burn stacks that you can have on the same intensity is 10, so let's talk about this in terms of how quickly you do enough damage to place 10 burn stacks on a target. The tooltip says that you proc 34% damage each second, and since it says that we gain a burn tick each second, it would take us 9 seconds to apply 10 stacks if we start the timer on the first tick of damage. This would give us a grand total of 340% weapon damage, and this doesn't include burn ticks. Since each burn tick does 18% total weapon damage over 6 seconds, we can multiply 18% times 10 for an additional 180% weapon damage that would be realized in 15 seconds for a grand total of 520% weapon damage realized over 15 seconds and placed in 9 seconds. In reality, it procs every half second, which means that we do 340% weapon damage and place 10 burn ticks totaling 180% weapon damage in 4.5 seconds. This is crazy strong. 2 notes here. First, your mana actually ticks down every half second and constantly alternates ticking down for 2 or 3 mana. Second, this ability can crit, and it looks like you always crit with Flamethrower if you're hitting a target from behind. Guys, if you want to do damage with the Firestaff, the Flamethrower is hands down the best weapon ability. The first upgrade is Fire's Reach. The range on Flamethrower gets a 50% increase. It looks like the distance is now around 6 meters, which can really help you stay out of the AoE cleave range from larger enemies. The second upgrade is Infernal Flames. Increase the base damage by 25%. Oh yeah, baby. Doing fun mathings, if you're in light armor, a 25% increase to the base damage is roughly the same as increasing the weapon damage to 41%, which means that your new total damage in 4.5 seconds is 410% weapon damage, plus still placing the 10 burn ticks totaling 180% weapon damage over 6 seconds. Guys, this ability slaps so hard. The third upgrade is Pyromancer. Your flamethrower has no cooldown, which means that you can spam that bad boy whenever you want. I think the optimal use of flamethrower would be to use it to apply 10 stacks of burning, then stop using it and spam some heavy attacks to get a little mana back. Then once the burn ticks start to fall off, hop right back on flamethrower and torch them all over again. The next ability is Incinerate. Slam that staff into the ground and cause an explosion, dealing 130% weapon damage to any enemy within 3 meters. Enemies hit will be knocked back and receive a burn debuff that will do 3% weapon damage over 6 seconds, totaling 18% weapon damage over that 6 seconds. This means the ability does a total of 148% weapon damage over 6 seconds and knocks back foes. This all sits on an 11.5 second cooldown and costs 22 mana. The first upgrade is Scorched. For each target you hit, place an additional burn tick, which means that at bare minimum, if you hit one target, they now get 2 burn ticks. This means that your new total damage is 166% weapon damage over 6 seconds. The second upgrade is Cauterize Wounds. Lifesteal 20% of the damage you do with Incinerate. This is only going to apply to the initial damage, not the damage over time from the burn ticks. The final upgrade is Flame Out. Thought Incinerate was already pretty solid value? Well, now everything gets doubled, and it counts as 2 different hits, which means that you do 2 times the 130% weapon damage, then you do 2 times the double burn ticks on a single target for a total of 260% weapon damage plus 4 burn ticks, which means that you do 332% weapon damage over 6 seconds, and you knock back enemies. The damage only gets crazier when you hit multiple enemies because for each new enemy, you're going to add 2 more burn ticks to all targets hit. This is an amazing ability with huge value, and it also crits people when you hit them from behind. So good! The final ability is Burnout. Bring that staff back and charge it, then dash forward 10 meters, dealing 129% weapon damage to anything in your path while also applying a burn tick that deals 10% weapon damage over 8 seconds for a total of 80% damage over 8 seconds. This means that in total, this ability does 209% weapon damage over 8 seconds. This all sits on a 19.1 second cooldown and costs 30 mana. This is your only movement ability, and it does solid damage while providing good mobility. I have no idea why Amazon felt the need to make this 129% weapon damage instead of not being weird and just using a normal number like 130%. So I did a fun community poll on YouTube, and I appreciated how around 500 of you all participated, so I figured I'd show our results on screen. Fun note, by the way, you can change the direction of your dash in the middle of the dash, which will arc your pathing. The first upgrade is All In. Get a 5% cooldown reduction for each enemy hit with your dash. 5% isn't much, but it can feel pretty impactful when doing elite dungeons. The final upgrade is Heated Up. Go 50% farther, which means that you now dash 15 meters. This is now the longest dash in New World and feels incredible to use as a gap closer or as an escape tool. You will literally be leaving your enemies in the dust here. Awesome abilities done, let's move on to the passives. First up, Pyromania. When below half health, get a 20% damage boost. I'm not sure how much you want to be under 50% health, but 20% is pretty solid and feels pretty nice. Heat Up. Every time you block a melee attack, get 5% of your mana back. This is great for clearing mobs in the open world, and it really helps keep your mana topped off while your burn ticks chunk enemies down. Let It Burn. When a burn debuff ticks for damage, get a 10% Fortify for 2 seconds. Fortify reduces the damage you take, and every new tick of burn damage will reset the timer to 2 seconds. Basically, this helps you be tankier when spamming your flamethrower. Kindle. Burn ticks last 20% longer. This is huge value because most burn ticks you're applying are the 3% weapon damage for 6 seconds, so now it's going to be for 7 seconds, which adds 3% weapon damage to any and all burn ticks you're applying. This is going to add even more value to longer lasting or harder hitting applications like Fireball's Burn Field or Burnout. Watch it burn. All your light attacks give enemies a burn tick that does 3% weapon damage for 6 seconds. This adds huge value to your light attacks, and thematically, it fits that Firestaff Mage playstyle really well. Combat Speed. Activating a Firestaff ability gives you a 10% haste for 5 seconds, and this has an internal cooldown of 10 seconds. Haste makes you run faster, and while 10% isn't insane, it's something small to help you travel quicker or help you kite enemies out in PvP, and this is so bugged. Or that tooltip is full of crap. I don't know which one. Here's what's actually happening. There's no internal cooldown, and anytime I hit the runs with any damage, including burn tick damage, I gain 2 more seconds of haste, and this caps at 10 seconds of haste. This has to be a huge bug, so hopefully this is gone by launch, but if not, enjoy your permanent haste in every fight, you Firestaff users. Trial by fire. When you take damage, create a 4-meter fire field around you that deals 5% weapon damage, and this lasts for 10 seconds, and this has an internal cooldown of 2 minutes. A 2-minute cooldown for something that only does 50% weapon damage over 10 seconds, as long as I stay in melee range, doesn't exactly fit the playstyle of a Firestaff user, so I don't really view this as too strong or helpful. Finally, we have the Pyromancer Elite Reheat. If you haven't cast a Firestaff ability in 6 seconds, your mana regen increases by 400%, which is absurdly fast. Most of the Firestaff abilities have high mana costs, and this is the glue that helps make the build work and not feel completely reliant on mana potions. This is going to reset you in between every fight, and this will even reset you in the middle of fights as long as you're only spamming light or heavy attacks. That's going to finish the Pyromancer trait line. To recap, you burn everything with constant burn tick applications, including light attacks. You have the longest dash in the game, you gain mana by blocking, and your elite provides massive mana regeneration. Before hopping into builds, I want to take a quick second to explain that burn stacks of the same intensity will stack with one another, and one target can only hold a total of 10 stacks. This means that if I apply 10 burn stacks with Flamethrower, then light attack or incinerate to apply the same 3% burn for 6 seconds, the runs would be capped and would not get an 11th stack. But if I hit him with burnout to apply a 10% burn, it'll appear as a new burn debuff and it will apply. So just be careful to not blow any cooldowns trying to apply burn ticks that are already capped on a target. Alright everybody, trait line's done, and I got some spicy builds for you. Let's run it. As always, there are a plethora of different ways to play New World that require different builds to focus on different roles, so we're going to start with my recommendations for playing the game solo open world, then partied open world, then expeditions, then 1v1 builds, then 50v50 war builds, and then finally, the one build to rule them all for if you want to do everything, but don't want to constantly change your build like me. First up, solo open world. Here, we're valuing big damage, plus utility, mobility, and mana regen. So let me walk you through the build a little bit here. Burnout and Incinerate are no-brainers. Huge value, and they're going to be in almost every single build I recommend. The dash and damage is too good, and the Incinerate knockback plus huge damage plus huge burn potential is crazy strong in all game modes. Now, my personal preference would be to bring Flamethrower and torching everything with huge damage really quickly. Come in and Flamethrower for a couple seconds, then once mobs try to hit you, just Incinerate and knockback and apply more burn stacks and kite the mob out by letting it die to burn ticks. Okay, so Flamethrower does the big damage, Incinerate does the big damage and knockback. Why don't we have any upgrades on Burnout? I'll be honest, I think there are so many amazing passives to select on Firestaff that I valued some additional passives over the upgrades. I absolutely love the Fire Mage passives and how they supercharge your heavies, plus the crit chance and burn on crits is just too juicy not to take. Then for the Pyromancer passives, Kindle is mandatory, and how could I not put burning on all our light attacks? Now, for some people, the up-close and personal Flamethrower might not be your style, and with so many amazing passives to pick from, I wanted to show you guys this alternative build. It's going to be super unorthodox, but I think it actually is going to be extremely strong. That's right, the 2 ability strat. Here's the deal. Your passives are amazing, your Fire Mage abilities are garbage, and Flamethrower does amazing damage, but it puts you very close to your enemies, and a lot of people like to play Firestaff in light armor, which means that getting close can be really scary. So instead, take a 15-meter dash, take a knockback with great damage, then just utilize the insanely good damage of your heavy and light attacks to destroy targets from range. Honestly, for solo gameplay, I think I kind of prefer this build over the Flamethrower one because this is the safer, easier option. Yeah, it's going to take you a little longer to kill ads, but with the proper spacing, you should never take a hit. Let this demonstrate to you guys just how much I value these passives and how little I value the Fire Mage abilities. For weapon pairings, I actually think a flamethrower Firestaff user in medium or heavy armor with a life staff secondary sounds extremely strong. Heavy armor resistances plus life staff means that you won't die ever, and the flamethrower is just that huge DPS output. If you go this route, I'd be sure to pick up the Let It Burn perk to keep yourself fortified while your burn ticks are proccing. Other strong pairings would include the Ice Gauntlet and the Rapier. The Ice Gauntlet also scales off intelligence and has equally amazing damage, but also provides some amazing CC and zoning to help keep adds off you while you let the burn ticks chip away at their health. This is the ultimate mage build, so I'm sure there's going to be plenty of you role players out there who are in love with the combo. The Rapier has secondary scaling off intelligence, and this really complements the Firestaff by providing a ton of great damage and mobility. The Rapier plus Firestaff combo is probably the most mobile pairing in New World, so mobs are going to have a really hard time reaching you if you kite it out properly. Next, you got a couple buddies and you're roaming around to turn them together for Partied Open World. Here, my recommendation depends on whether or not you have a tank in the party that can hold aggro. If so, I'd recommend Flamethrower and just pumping huge damage without having to care about pulling too much aggro. And even if you do, you can just dash right out to create space using Burnout. This is almost identical to the first solo open world build I showed, but this time we swapped out the cooldown reduction on Fiery Restoration for the 20% additional damage on crits. Your job will be to help AoE cleave down mob clusters, so the harder you're hitting, the better. Now, if you don't have a tank that holds aggro for you, I would not recommend Flamethrower and being up close and personal. I'd either recommend the wonky 2-skill build I showed earlier, or this new version using Fireball. Fireball is the least bad of the 3 Fire Mage abilities, and if a bunch of mobs want to sit on the burn field, it can help you clear out clusters a little bit faster. Since we're taking a Fire Mage ability, we get access to the Fire Mage Elite and can enjoy a nice 30% DPS boost. Just remember to stay standing on the rune. For weapon pairings, I'd really only recommend the Ice Gauntlet and the Rapier. The Ice Gauntlet will really help your team with zone controlling the mobs together and preventing them from accessing your backline easily, while also providing extremely good AoE DPS. Also, if you wind up struggling with mana because you aren't taking reheat anymore, the Ice Gauntlet can quickly get all your mana back within 2. If you want to run a melee weapon, then you should try out the Rapier. This is the only melee weapon that has secondary scaling off intelligence and can be just as deadly in the right hands with a 10-meter dash, a parry, and a spammable invulnerability frame. And it does huge single target damage. Let the Firestaff do the AoE damage, then let the Rapier be the big single target nuking machine. Next up, Expeditions, which are 5-man instance dungeons. Here, you're going to be coming in as a DPS, so all we care about is pumping damage. As such, I'm recommending the same Flamethrower build from Partied Open World. Flamethrower hits any and everything in its path, so not only can you AoE cleave mobs down faster, but it's also your highest single target DPS as well. Flamethrower bosses to 10 stacks of burn ticks, then pepper with heavy attacks to regain some of that mana back. Once the stacks start to fall off the boss, go right back to that Flamethrower. Incinerate also does incredible damage, and Burnout is there for when you accidentally pull aggro, or you just need to escape in a boss mechanic, or you just want to use it for damage. For weapon pairings, I'll again be recommending the Ice Gauntlet and the Rapier. The Ice Gauntlet will excel at helping the group clear big mob clusters and will help keep your mana topped off. The Rapier will put in more work during the actual boss encounters where its high single target DPS can really shine. As an alternative to the usual suspects, I'll also recommend the Spear in Expeditions. The Spear is the only weapon in the game that can provide a 30% rend, which reduces armor and resistances, and this value is unmatched by any other weapon in New World. This will greatly increase not only your damage, but your entire party's damage, which leads to faster clears and less mechanics. PvE done, let's turn to the PvP side of things. First up, 1v1s. Here, we're leaning all in on the crazy train. Here's the deal. Those Fire Mage abilities absolutely suck in 1v1s. No one with decent reflexes is getting touched with Pillar of Flame, and you're also a sitting duck while you try to aim it. Meteor Shower is even worse, and no sane person is just going to lie down and take a nap in your wimpy Fireball Firefield. Finally, yeah, Flamethrower does solid damage, but it's not designed to out-trade melee classes. Melee classes will straight up just hit you way harder than you're hitting them, and you're going to lose just about every trade. So, we lean into the crazy with 2 abilities that help us maintain spacing. Then, we're just going to pepper with light and heavy attacks to very slowly whittle away enemies with burn ticks. We're also going to be taking advantage of the constant fortify uptime from burn ticks and nice little haste boost after spells to help with spacing. This build is all about kiting and letting your burn ticks slowly whittle away your enemy's health bars. For weapon pairings, I'll again recommend the Ice Gauntlet or the Rapier. The Ice Gauntlet is extremely annoying to go against as it zone controls really well with Ice Shower and Ice Storm, and on top of that, it has a combat reset button in Entomb for whenever you actually get caught out. The Ice Gauntlet will give you a ton of tools to keep enemies off you while you pepper them with burn ticks. The Rapier is the ultimate 1v1 weapon. It's designed to thrive with high mobility and a spammable invulnerability. This is the riskier but higher reward playstyle where you can outtrade most weapons with well-timed skills, then back out and continue peppering with the Firestaff. I say this as a Great Axe Hatchet user. This is also the hardest weapon combo to catch. You have 2 huge dashes, a bunch of haste, and this typically runs light armor so you can dodge roll for distance as well. It is crazy mobile. Next, we have 50v50 Wars. Here, for the first time ever, I'll recommend 2 Fire Mage abilities in Meteor Shower and Fireball. As a Firestaff user in Wars, your job is to stay in the backlines and avoid getting caught out. Your job is provide big AoE damage on enemy clusters that your frontline is engaging with. As such, you want your fat AoE potential damage, and while Flamethrower does way more damage, it would put you in the front lines, which is exactly where we don't want you to be. Pepper your enemies with light and heavy attacks, and if you do wind up getting caught out or focused, just use your 15-meter dash to get to safety. We're going to be rocking the rune for extra 30% DPS, so don't forget to stand in it. And also, if you see teammates with runes on the ground, you can stand on their runes and receive the same damage boost, so always try to play off other Firestaff users as well. For weapon pairings, I think the Ice Gauntlet is the best choice here, as it complements your playstyle the best. In Wars, Firestaff users shouldn't ever be in melee range of enemies, and the Ice Gauntlet is the best weapon at helping with that. It also does amazing AoE damage with Ice Storm and can reset your mana bar that's going to wind up getting low from spamming all those big Firestaff spells. If you want to go with a melee weapon to help kite out enemies flanking your backline, then I'd pair with the Rapier or the Spear. I've already sung the praises of the Rapier enough, so I won't repeat myself there, but the Spear works in a bit of a different way. Instead of being incredibly mobile with huge damage, the Spear has very quick CC abilities that can chain off each other for really nice trade patterns, and while your enemy is getting up off the ground, you can kite away and start creating distance back to your allies. Finally, you're like me. You love New World and you're going to be doing all different types of content, but there's no way you're going to constantly change your build around. Well, no worries, because I present to you the one build to rule them all. And yeah, that's right, it's the 2 ability build. Here's the deal. With all these passives, your light and heavy attacks are basically your 3rd and 4th abilities with how much power they pack. The constant burn applications, the mana, the crits, it's just too good to not have, and pound for pound, your light and heavy attacks provide more damage and more value than any of the other Fire Mage abilities, and Flamethrower still has the same problem as before where it's incredibly high damage, but it puts you so close to your enemies that your squishy butt can't outtrade most of the encounters in melee form. Thus, we say screw it to our 3rd ability and rock our trusty dash and our knockback, and we just spam light and heavy attacks until our enemies burn to death. I know it's weird, and I know the concept of limiting yourself to 2 abilities might break your brains, but I'm telling you guys, I honestly think this is the strongest, most well-rounded build for Firestaff users. Just try it out, and if it sucks, you can yell at me in the comments, and if it's awesome, then maybe you come sub to me on Twitch. Deal? For weapon pairings, I'm recommending the same 2 weapons as always, the Ice Gauntlet and the Rapier. The Ice Gauntlet plus Firestaff is just the ultimate mage build, where the Firestaff has more damage over time and mobility, and the Ice Gauntlet is just jam-packed with CC and zoning, and it comes with a nice reset button with Entomb. Let the Ice Gauntlet zone off enemies while your burn ticks slowly whittle them away. Or, if you figure yourself a pro gamer and love the idea of high mobility and high outplay potential, run the Rapier and dash around to turn them at the speed of light while also doing huge damage. Just be careful though, because while this has the potential for extremely high damage, if you mistime your abilities, your squishy butt is going to be a sitting duck. No matter which weapon you choose to pair with, if you utilize the extreme damage over time with the kiting available in the Firestaff kit, you'll be grinning ear to ear while your enemies burn away one by one. Alright everybody, that's going to finish up the Firestaff. Thanks so much to the runs for letting me torch him over and over again, and I hope you guys are ready to go out there and burn and turn him to the ground. Love you guys, appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.